Meanwhile, the threat of radical Islam spreading in the West Bank, the Arab Muslim world, and even here in the West. We have radical Islamists using the anti-Israel demos to recruit people, especially young people, to their cause, also calling for a jihad against the infidel West, attacking not only Jews in cities like London and New York, but also those who stand by them. A couple of weeks ago, Barbara and I went to a meeting with some Jewish friends and the local MP, whose name is Mike Freer, about defending Jews against anti-Semitism in this area. Mike Freer actually spoke very well about the subject. I have my issues with Mike Freer, but on this issue he spoke very well, and he stood up for the Jewish people and has done so publicly. Headlines of the Jewish Chronicle this week says that Mike Freer is now fearing for his life because of his stand for Israel. And it's becoming quite dangerous. In fact, even we could be putting ourselves in danger putting out this kind of information because of the growing hostility and the growing attack upon Israel. And if you're going around with your little badges about standing up for Israel, you could also be putting yourself in line for hostility from those people who don't like Israel. We're living in a very dangerous time, and we have some very dangerous forces which are being unleashed. And basically they're spreading their propaganda against, not just against Israel, but also calling for submission to Islam. There are actually about 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. That's about a quarter of the entire global population. And they're probably going to play a major role in the growing chaos of the last days. So this war in the Middle East is not the end of the story. Instead, it could be just the beginning. And we're seeing so many things happening which are pushing us towards the end-time conflict. Hamas Charter actually says Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. Not only does it want to obliterate Islam, Israel, it wants to obliterate the Western way of life and also Christianity. So, should we be worried about it? Yeah, you should actually. Be worried, but don't be terrified. A lot of people are talking about Islamophobia. I'm not preaching Islamophobia because a phobia is an irrational fear. It's not irrational to have some concerns about these guys because they actually have some pretty dangerous intentions. But the God of the Bible is actually against them. He's on the side of those who stand for Israel and those who stand for his truth. And of course, those who stand for Jesus, the Messiah. If you take the Bible literally, then the rebirth of Israel is the sign of the budding of the fig tree that Jesus spoke about as a sign of his return. Luke's Gospel, chapter 21, verse 28, it says, "Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near." And he spoke to them a parable, "Look at the fig tree and all the trees when they're already budding. You see and know for yourselves that summer is now near." So when you see the rebirth of Israel, you see it's a sign of the second coming of the Messiah. We began by talking about Jewish people looking for the coming of the Messiah. We believe it's the coming again of the Messiah, and you're seeing these things happening which are signs of the coming again of the Messiah. Israel's life, national life being restored, that's what the fig tree represents, the national life of Israel. It was scattered, now it's being reborn. But it's being contested, and now it's reaching its peak. Events are being set in motion which will lead to climactic events of the last days. How long and in what order remains to be seen. There are certain things which the Bible says will happen in the last days. One of them is the war of Gog and Magog, when an alliance of nations comes down from the north against Israel and is supernaturally destroyed by God. Another is there'll be a false peace treaty. Daniel speaks about that, some kind of a peace covenant which will be set up for 7 years, which will break down halfway through and leads not to peace, but the final conflict and the second coming of Jesus.